Hi, I'm Sarah from The Upcoming. What a pleasure to be able to speak to you today. Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you.
Maybe you could begin with a brief introduction to Right Here, Right Now. Not an easy one, I guess, to sort of define. Where would you begin? What can people expect when they watch the film?
Hopefully, there's two people to expect. One is diehard fans of Ghost and their music and their lore and their characters and their storytelling, for whom this is hopefully a feast. And everything we were doing was just saying this will be a feast for fans. There's so much lore. There's so much moving the story forward. There's so many Easter eggs. There's so much care put into the way the concert was captured, moments that even if you've seen the band 10 times, you've never been this close. And then, of course, there are exclusive performances that occurred only at these shows. If you weren't there, you haven't seen, because no phones were allowed. So there are no film videos of some of these pieces that were designed just for the filming. But then also, hopefully, there must be a component of people, a band like this that's still growing and evolving. Anything could be the first thing people see. Perhaps it's easier to say, I've heard about this band, or I'm enticed by the imagery or the T-shirts or some of the iconography I see. I would like to give it a shot. And because seeing a movie is a lower commitment than seeing a $100 concert, there is a world where I could see people who have never listened to this band watching this and getting sucked in, because you're realizing that this is such a deep well of music and storytelling that you can now really dive in on. So both of those potential people watching the movie had to be kept in mind at all times.
And maybe you can tell us a bit about the genesis of the project. I mean, you've worked on so many different sort of genres and different types of film. From sort of more fictional films like Her Smell, music videos, other documentaries. How does this kind of fit in with your work and your creative work? And how did this collaboration come about with Tobias?
Well, it fits in because I've done it. The opportunities you can get are never yours to control. It would be very strange and bizarre to say, like, my plan is to make narrative features and then one day collaborate with a phenomenally successful and well-known band on a 2.5-hour phantasmagoric, satanic storytelling rock movie. Like, that's not a plan anybody makes. But if you're lucky, which I consider myself, and if you're open to anything that is a creative exploration of anything you're interested in, then fantastic opportunities tend to come your way. And I consider myself very amenable. I mean, I know people who would never be interested in, filmmakers, friends, they wouldn't be interested in making a 30-minute mockumentary that is a deep dive into a band's fictional lore to be released on April Fool's Day on YouTube. But for me, making Metal Myths for Ghost, I treated that like a short film, and I got to create moments in it that I'm extremely happy with, and it spoke to my interests, both as a lover of, as Robert Kolodny, this film's cinematographer and editor, like to say, vaguely evil-seeming rock bands with black and white face paint, the best genre of music. Kiss, The Misfits, Ghost, all the best. So, like, these are all my interests, and then getting to make something that's like, oh, well, I can do something that's kind of like unsolved mysteries or ancient aliens, like things I love. Yeah, that's a piece of filmmaking that I can really sink my teeth into. It's a 30-minute promotional film for a band's website or for YouTube, but it's a piece of work, and I take that seriously. And I think that openness has led me to see that, yes, it's very hard to make a scripted film. It's very hard to get the money and to get the actors to make something like Her Smell. So for something like this, it's like, well, you don't have to raise the money. This band is a business. You don't have to convince people that this idea is going to be good. Tobias has been doing that for 10 years and succeeding all the way up to sold out arenas. You don't have to worry, geez, I think this is really good. Will anyone ever see this? Or will this movie just disappear into the world? No, this is being fed directly into thousands and thousands of fans. So getting to work on something where you have the security of knowing every image we put into this will be analyzed and dissected is a huge, that's a trade-off I think anybody should consider taking. If you've made independent films where the question is, who knows if this will ever see the light of day, to do something where, as I said to Rob the other day, when a promo clip was released, every prop has already been analyzed in stills by fans. Every little detail we put into some of the edits has been appreciated and memed and turned into GIFs and stills. And I said, this is the only thing we'll ever work on, where every single choice we made, fans will notice and care about those choices. So as a filmmaker, that's what you want, right? Like, that's a rarefied position. That's only if you're working at the top of Hollywood IP, where every detail and every Marvel movie or Star Wars movie will be analyzed. Like, we're getting that same experience, but for me, it speaks to my interest that this is as fun to me to make, because I love stuff like this. And how many people get a chance to kind of move from one car on the train that their career is on to another car.
And it is such a kind of unique type of film, a genre of film, this kind of narrative concept, a hybrid. Did you kind of take lessons learned from other projects you've worked on that influenced the way you approach this? Was this something you almost had to approach in a completely fresh way? Were there other kinds of films like this that you took influence from? Where did you begin?
Yeah, I mean, the irony is that as we were building this big opulent set, talking about how we would sort of time out the entrances and exits of Papa and the other characters backstage, the producer, Craig Buda, who I worked with on everything, says, this really is just like her smell, which was another we just built all these huge backstage spaces to sort of create this false verisimilitude of a concert happening on the other side of the wall. In this case, we get to edit together with a real concert, so it's even better. So there was the joke made by some of my usual collaborators, all of whom I got to bring onto this. It's really not that different. But at the same time, what I love, and as a creative person who enjoys challenges, I can't think of anything else like this. And I love all sorts of things. And I love music movies, and I love, anything in that world. And yet this speaks to you could see a very good concert film that captures the experience of being at a show. But the way that Tobias has created this other narrative of characters that orbits his albums and his tours makes the stitching of these two halves into a film together extremely unique. So yes, even if I was exclusively working in the music film space, could do 10 more, you would never do one that the narrative and the emotional resonance of these characters and the storyline is as important to fans as getting to experience this concert. So, in 2024, there's a great many things being made all the time. To be able to say I don't really know what else is like this, maybe nothing. To say that is well, I have to do it, because if this really is the only one of these, we talked about the Metallica film Through the Never, which is a concert, but in the film, there's a fictional character played by an actor existing with the concert narrative. And then what Tobias said always was that is kind of the only other example. The difference is that this movie, these characters are already known. These are previously established storylines rather than trying to give people a concert film and a storyline. We are doing that, but we're doing it with 5-6 years of people's relationships with these characters built in. Or even if you've never watched any of the YouTube stories with these characters, the film still inherits that history. And if this is the first thing you see, the little catch up at the beginning, you would say, oh, I like this. I have some homework to do now. And that's kind of, I've never seen anything like it. And that's, if I can say that about something, it becomes a project that is of immense interest to me.
Talking about maybe kind of the logistics of filming it, putting it together, what was that like? What were some of the challenges, in capturing the live concert, stitching it together with these sort of other scenes, but, backstage? What were some of the highlights, some of the challenges?
Yeah, well, credit has to be given to Jim Parsons and just his ruthlessly efficient camera guys from this company called Fortress. I mean, if someone said, you need to film 2 days at a 10,000 seat arena, I wouldn't know the first. Now I would, because I got to learn from the way Jim and the film's producer, Jonas Ackerland, who are pros at this, were able to be like, this is how you do it. And they did it. And I got to just watch and observe and ask 1,000 questions and see this happen very efficiently. Watching these guys capture every image you would need to then edit the movie exactly the way Tobias wants it was really amazing, just as a fan of these things. But of course, many of the great concert films that I've grown up with, they were filmed at a time where there might be 4 camera guys operating a 16 millimeter handheld camera. And the movies are wonderful and magical, but I could never wrap my head. I could do that with no help, but 12 cameras on the right side one night and 12 cameras on the left side the next night. This is what they do, and they're amazing at it. The extreme challenge then is creating the movie with that as basically a spine, but a spine that when you finish it has a bunch of ribs missing, because then you have to make those and patch them in. And then the challenge, and this is something that was extremely important to Tobias and then me as well, because of the sort of mathematical way my brain tends to work. This guitar solo, he would say, is 90 seconds long. I leave the stage then. We have 90 seconds to make this scene. And I would say, that's great. So then in the edit, they would give us the, a version of the edit with the guitar solo, knowing that we're not going to be living with that footage. And it's like, okay, the scene can't be 5 minutes long. The concert has to keep going. We have to respect the reality of how this concert that you've created is actually existing. So let's back all of our scenes into this timing. Let's look at the edit. There's 2 doors on the stage. You walk through the right door when you leave, and you come back in through the left door. So I have a script supervisor who I've worked with before on Her Smell saying, like, I've studied the footage. So this scene needs to start with you entering this way. I have the footage here on my iPad. We're timing this out. I'm going to make sure that this scene can be edited into the time we have. And then you walk through that door. As we create the scenes, the fact that the concert was already complete made it incredibly easy because we knew how much time we had. It made it very hard also, because sometimes we would say, you're only backstage for 30 seconds right here. That's 30 seconds to get in, do some shots, move the story forward a little bit, and get back out. And then we have to go back into the concert footage and make sure we have the widest wide shot where we see you coming out from behind the drums. And that was incredibly fun, because it was just like putting a puzzle together, making sure that the reality of the 2 hours that you spend in this arena never feels like, and then we pause the concert, all that energy is lost. We do a scene, and then we have to get all that energy back. The earliest edits, the rough assemblies, they did feel like that, as all rough assemblies do. It felt like we just lose the entire energy. And then by the end, it was like, we never lose the energy. The sound mix keeps the energy there. The editing, sometimes we want to cut back to just a moment on stage just to remind you. And it was a great challenge, but some of my favorite things are shots that I filmed at the Forum with the actors. There's one shot of Sister Imperator, and then the reverse angle of it is Tobias in Brooklyn 6 months later. And then it cuts from him in Brooklyn to her in LA, to him in Brooklyn, back to LA. And stuff like that is like my dream as like a problem-solving, low-budget filmmaker. Is like, how can you make that work? And it was really fun.
What do you hope people will take away from it? Because I guess, this type of film, it is kind of a tribute and capturing the legacy of a band like this, and the fact you say, people don't have this kind of footage on their phones, and the fact that this will exist, after their success, it will be a tribute to that in the long term. And it's also kind of the thing of being immersive and being in the present, and it seems to really celebrate that in this quite kind of fun loving way.
Again, I just hope that for fans that have been with this band for years, that this is exactly what they want, but maybe don't know this is what they are getting. Again, like I'm a fan of this band. I was a fan of this band before I was ever a collaborator. I saw Ghost opening up for Iron Maiden. Anyone can get into anything anyway. There are many fans that have discovered the band in the last year or so because one of their songs became popular on TikTok. There are fans like myself that discovered them opening for one of the most legendary metal bands of all time. There are fans that probably have come to them through these very goofy and very fun YouTube stories, which this film continues and in some cases, concludes and moves forward. And there are fans that probably just come to them through the music videos and don't know about the stories at all. And just as a fan, you just want to make something that anybody could say, I got into them from the movie, the way that's just the next thing that hopefully can bring new people in. And that's a huge responsibility that I, am humbled to be able to be a partner in and took very seriously, both as a fan of the band and just as a filmmaker who's never had the luxury of saying, like, this is being released worldwide, thousands of screens, like in 4 months from when we're shooting. We gotta execute this. Like this has to be surgically precise. We do not have the time to find this in the edit. We have to do this. We have to edit it correctly, and we have to get it finished. And that was a wonderful challenge. And anyone would be lucky to get to do something like that.
And just very quickly, other things that you have. Hercules going to be working with Maya Hawke. Working on other documentaries, Pavements thing. So maybe just words about
Pavements would be the next thing. It's in as much as I say, we shot this just a few months ago. And of course, the Forum concerts were only about 9 months ago now. They were last September. I've been working on this Pavement movie for 4 years. So it's the exact opposite. It's very funny that this movie has been finished, not only first, but significantly before the Pavement movie will be finished. But that is another attempt at sort of meta-narrative musical storytelling that mixes the forms. In that case, it's a film that is part straightforward documentary, part phony baloney biopic, part musical. God willing, that movie is finished, and I continue to do projects for collaborative artists like that and like this. Well, thank you
so much for sharing all that with me, and I really can't wait for everyone to experience this on the big screen. Thanks a lot.
Well, thank you.